Hey guys, Kevin again. If you guys remember way back in, I'd say, the beginning of June, which feels like ages ago, it really does. Um, there was a show on ABC that premiered called The Whispers, and I reviewed the first episode of that show and said that I might stick with it. Well, I did end up sticking with it, and the season finale just happened last night, and I just watched it, so now I'm going to review the entire first season of The Whispers. Even though there were times where I really wanted to abandon the show, I did stick with it, and we're just gonna get into it. So after the first episode, I was impressed to a degree, but I wasn't really sure where they were going because, like I said, the first biggest problem with the show is I think they revealed way too much in the first episode. They should not have revealed that Sean was John Doe. They should never have done that. I don't think that was a good reveal. I don't think they handled that very well at all. I think they introduced way too many characters already in the first episode. Already we had Harper, Minx, and Henry, and we focused, I think, we didn't focus enough on the characters we should have, and I would have wanted them to do more with them, and I was really interested in seeing where this show goes. And I have to say, overall, this first season, I was never really, hyped up for this show, but overall, it was a pretty good first season. It does have a shit ton of problems. So many problems. There are so many things about this show that I'm going to talk about, and right off the bat, I'm going to say, I did not like the second, third, or fourth episode of this show really at all. In fact, I wanted to stop watching after, the third episode, mainly because of what they decided to focus on. Because, of course, we have this whole plot of this entity Drill and what he's doing, and what did they decide to focus on? An affair! That's what they decided to focus on. It's really, really stupid, because basically now that Claire knows that her husband is, in fact, alive, she basically is regretting an affair she had with Wes Lawrence, and I'm just like, this is where we're going? I mean, it's so stupid. We spend so much time on this pointless affair that Claire and Wes had, and I understand you have to connect these characters somehow, but I just felt like an affair seemed like the cheapest plot device possible, because if you do an affair plot, you have to do it in a way where, and if they were to do this, they should have done it in a way where we're already connected to the characters, we already knew what happened, and we're not connected to these characters yet, we're just meeting them. And at this point, these characters are not very compelling. Claire and Wes had an affair, and Sean left her, basically, because this him and Lena don't really have the best relationship and things like that. I just didn't care. I didn't care at all. I thought this plot was really stupid. There were so many things I hate about it. The problem is they focus so much on it in the second and third episode and not nearly enough on Drill. I felt they focused way too much on this, and they should have spent maybe half of what they spent on it. They spent about 7 or 6 episodes focusing on this affair, and it was really stupid. Again, like I said, I would have stopped watching the show if this was all they focused on. It mainly is this. I mean, there are so many things, like, for example, Lena's really upset with Wes because he's working with Claire again. Okay, I kind of like that, but at the same time, everything with Claire and Wes is just so stupid. Because I have to say, the guy that plays Wes is not a very good actor. He's really not. We're going to get into this, but, I really was not into this plot at all. I wasn't into it. I didn't find it interesting. I found it really, really stupid, honestly. I didn't really like it very much at all, and just the fact that this is where we were going with this plot, I wasn't a big fan of. I really didn't like the way they were going with that. So, most of the first half is her trying to figure out, if John Doe really is her husband, Sean, if he really is back, and eventually she does realize that he is, and basically, John Doe, in the meantime, Sean doesn't remember who he is. He is basically being, used by Drill. Drill's kind of controlling him to do these really bad things, and, West also investigates him and is linked to the Bellings bombing, basically, because supposedly, of course, Sean died. They don't really think that he's alive, and he ends up holding this doctor hostage, escaping capture when lights in the bathroom flicker as a warning message, and this is basically when we realize that Drill is communicating to everyone through electricity. He communicates through electrical lights, and that's how he tells them what to do, and that I thought was definitely very interesting. And eventually, though, we do eventually get the reveal of Sean knowing who he is, knowing that, getting his memory back, and I like seeing that. But to me, that felt like a completely different season. After Sean gets his memory back, this show feels like a completely different show. Suddenly, we're not focusing on this affair. Suddenly, we're not focusing on what's going on with Sean Doe, because now Sean knows who he is. And I understand they wanted to stretch that. They didn't know if the show was going to be, if the show was going to continue after the second season. But again, it just felt like so rushed. It felt like, okay, we could have spent an entire first season on this, and then the second season he finds out who he is. That's kind of where I thought we were going, but that's not what happens. He finds out right at the end of episode 6, and I was very surprised that that happened. The most annoying part about this, though, is now that he knows, who he is, he knows about, of course, he remembers Claire and Wes's affair. So much of the second half is Sean and Claire trying to get back to where they are. I like seeing Sean come back and try to help out Henry and things like that. I thought that was very well done. But overall, I just didn't find this plot very compelling. And unfortunately, Sean really doesn't have much to do other than once in a while go visit this strange... Eventually, they do give him something to do in episode like 11 or 12. But for a while, he's just there. He's back, and I understand, like, it's kind of awkward for him, but you could have given him a little bit more to do, and I really didn't feel they had much for him to do, except for the fact that he's now with Claire, and it kind of felt pointless to me. The whole storyline felt like it was really good, but I felt like they could have done a lot more with it, definitely, and I wish they would have done more with that plot. Reason I'm complaining so much is because of what they end up doing with the other stuff. I would not be complaining as much about this whole affair if the other stuff they do was not very good, which it is. What this show should have really focused on is Minx and Henry. They are the thing that makes this show as good as it is. Minx as a character that is by far my favorite character on the show, and she continually kept me watching. That really is what kept me watching the show, was Minx as a character. Minx is a very mysterious character because, unlike the other kids, she seems to be enjoying what Drill does, seems to actually be kind of evil or possessed or something. She just seems very disturbed and kind of is happy about what Drill is doing. And she's very creepy. The girl that plays her, this little girl, Kylie Rogers, really has a future in horror. I would love to see her do a horror movie. She is incredible in this show. She really made this show for me, I have to say. I mean, there's so much they did with her. Because when you first start this, basically, she starts having, they start realizing what she's doing. And she starts getting these, she starts basically going to this therapist, and the therapist, of course, doesn't really understand what's going on with her, and the whole season we're kind of building up to what's going on. Well, my favorite plot of this by far is what ends up happening with Drill, because Drill basically does what Minx wants Drill to do, basically whatever the children want, Drill gives them if they do something for him. And what ends up happening with Minx is that she wishes that Wes and Lena will love each other again and that they'll be happy. And eventually Lena starts to realize that Drill's trying to turn Minx against her own parents. That's really what he's doing. What it's doing, basically, he's trying to turn, Minx against her own parents. And Lena gets involved in this. She tries to get Minx away from Drill. And for a while, in fact, Lena even finds out about Drill. She starts using Drill. It's really interesting stuff. The problem is they don't focus on this enough. It's the most interesting plot in the show, and I really didn't feel they did enough with it. There's so much wasted potential here, really. There's so much wasted potential, and there were times where I wish the show focused only on Minx and Lena, because their storyline is so compelling, and Kristen Connolly is by far one of the best out of all the actors here. She is a fantastic actress. She did a great job of what she had, and especially towards that second half, she became amazing. I really love what they did with her as a character. But unfortunately, there are some characters that really have nothing to do in this show. One of the biggest out-of-place characters is Jessup Rollins, played by Derek Webster. Really has nothing to do. I mean, he's divorced, he's Claire's new partner, and all he does mainly is he does investigate with her every now and again about Drill, but a lot of the time he's kind of being like this weird sort of like father figure to her, telling her, oh, no, don't go with Wes, Sean wouldn't like that, and I'm just like, you're her new partner. How the hell would you know what's been going on? He just feels completely out of place. They don't really give him anything to do till the finale, which was very strange, and he was the character for me that was the most wasted. They could have done a lot more with him, and they really didn't, and there were times where I forgot he was on the show because they really do nothing with him as a character, except that he's there every now and again to investigate Drill. It just didn't really seem that compelling to me, and I wish they would have done more with Jessup Rollins as a character, which they really didn't, I have to say. And then we get into the character of Henry. Now, I know this is very scattered, guys, but this entire season just felt very scattered to me. I'll get into stuff that I really did like. Then we have the character of Henry, of course, who is Claire's son. I think they handled stuff really well with this character. The bonding between Minx and Henry is one of the best bondings of the entire show. And he's also a very good actor, Kyle Harrison. Especially for a little kid, he's actually quite good. Because basically, Drill cures him of him being deaf and basically tries to, his wish is for Sean to be brought back to him. That's exactly what happens. But of course, Drill does get his way, so that basically is what they plan on doing. And I think that's very interesting. What we saw with Henry is Minx and Henry being manipulated by Drill is really compelling stuff to watch, especially when you start to see that they're not the only ones it's happening to. All of these kids are being manipulated by Drill, and it's really interesting stuff to watch. Problem is, we don't focus on this till about episode 7. Episode 7 is when we realize that there are more kids that are being manipulated by Drill besides Minx, Henry, and Harper. That's when we really start to realize that. There are other kids throughout the show, but it really doesn't start till about episode 7, and it's not very compelling because they don't really focus on it a lot. It seemed like they tried to focus on it. They think they're focusing on it, when really the whole time they're focusing on Claire, Sean, and Wes drama, which was never that interesting to me. It really wasn't ever something I was that into. And my other huge problem with the show is that they keep making you think Drill is over. They keep making you think this. Throughout the season, they think that they do in episode 7. They do it, I think, in episode 12. I mean, they do it in the finale. I mean, there's so many times when they keep making you think that this is going to be the end of Drill. If Drill ends, the show ends. It's that simple. There's no way they're going to stop it. So in episode 7, when they're thinking they destroyed Drill, I'm like, there's no way. You're supposed to care. I didn't care because I knew that Drill would come back because, if Drill ends, the show ends. It's that simple. There's no way that they would have destroyed Drill. I just knew it wasn't possible, and they did it. They did not destroy him. It just, no shit they didn't destroy him. It seemed, pretty obvious to me that they didn't. It was really dumb, in my opinion, that they did that, and I really didn't like that. For me, this show started to get really great, I'd say, in episode 8. That is when the show got really interesting, because at this point, they think that Drill's gone, and there's nobody else out there. But then they find out that not only is Drill here now, he was there in 1982, and there's this boy named Thomas who is very scared, very petrified. He's now, like, in his 20s, and basically we find out that he also had this entity named Drill who killed his brother Elliot after Elliot tried to stop Drill, because that's what it seems like Drill does. Whoever does that, whoever, gets involved kills him. And basically, they decide to visit Thomas, who confirms the incident, says that, Thomas was institutionalized for 10 years. He basically did whatever he could to stop Drill, and he doesn't realize that Drill's still out there, and he's obviously terrified what's been happening. And basically, he tells the story of how nuclear tests between 1950 and 1982 sent beacons into space, which eventually led to Drill coming to Earth. And he's horrified to hear about Henry and the others talking to Drill, and saying that the first Drill must have gone out a stress signal before Thomas killed him, and basically, Thomas killed Drill, and I thought that was really interesting. And when they're about to find out, Lena arrives and basically being manipulated by Drill, she shoots Thomas in the moment, and then we get into what is by far my favorite episode of the season, which is episode 9, Broken Child. This is how you write an episode of this show. This entire episode, you're on the edge of your seat, you don't know what's going to happen, and it's really intense stuff, guys. I mean, I was really on the edge of my seat here, because if this guy dies, he is the only way they can figure out how to save Drill, and that's when things I think got really interesting. I was on the edge of my seat for this episode, and I definitely really love seeing that, and I thought they did a really great job with that. And we start to find out more and more about this guy Thomas, and they start, to realize more of what's going on with him. And at the hospital, we see this boy is basically awaking after his sister communicates with Drill, and Drill messes with the power, and he goes to see Thomas, demanding on a threat of death that Thomas explains how he killed Drill, and basically Thomas says that Drill, destroys his entire life anyway, and basically Drill does end up killing Thomas, but they do realize that there is a way to kill Drill. That basically they realize that upon the sight of Elliot's killing, Wes and Claire determined not only how Thomas killed Drill, but why, because Thomas could see that Drill had now completely possessed Elliot. So obviously, Drill, they know that he's going to possess a child, and that's when things, I think, got really interesting, is when we realized that Drill is out there, he's going to possess a child, and it could happen to really anyone. That's when I think things got very interesting, and I really did like seeing that, I have to say. So, Claire's obviously breaking down. She doesn't know if this is going to happen to Henry, and she's freaking out about that, and I think that was definitely very interesting. I have to say, Lily Rabe definitely did a great job throughout this entire season. Definitely, I will say that she was fantastic in the show. And then we get into, of course, episode 10. Episode 10, there were some really great things about it, but then there were some things that just felt completely out of place to me. Mainly what they do with the character of Lena, because as I said, Lena tries to get Minx away from Drill, and because of this, Drill ends up killing Lena. And I was really pissed when that happened, because it felt wasted to me. It felt like wasted potential. They were doing really great stuff with her character, and then they just kill her off. And the thing is, this really does nothing except show how bad of an actor Barry Sloane is, because any scene where Barry Sloane has to cry is hilarious. I was laughing at his cry. He's like, that's how he cries. It's so stupid. It honestly is really stupid, and I was laughing when he cried, because it's really stupid. It doesn't seem real at all. It seems completely fake, and I was laughing when he cried. So if they want us to show how bad of an actor Barry Sloane is, I mean, they did it. Also, Wes is not that compelling of a character on his own. So Lena Gone really made me not as interested in Wes as a character. They do some good stuff with him, show how he's a devoted father to Minx and things like that, and how he tries to help her out. That I like seeing, but what ends up happening is that they really don't do much with him as a character, because of the fact that Minx is pretty much now, because of the fact that, Lena's kind of gone, and we're kind of down to the last 3 episodes, it just felt like a wasted death to me. It seemed like they wanted to do something shocking. They wanted to get the ratings up, because the ratings have been horrible for this show. I don't think the show is going to get renewed for a second season. I really don't see that happening. But, because of them killing off Lena, I was really pissed off, because Lena was one of the best characters in the show, I think, personally, and Wes is just not that strong of a character on his own. He really has nothing to do other than investigate Drill, and I know that's interesting, but they could have done more with him. Get him more involved with it. Don't just get his daughter involved. Minx, as I said, should have been the main focus of the show, because she has one of the most interesting things that happens, I think, toward the end of the show, because now they know that there could be a child possessed, and basically what happens is everyone they put all these children in this compound, basically, with no outside power lines, because they have no idea which child is possessed by Drill. And what ends up happening is we realize that there's this thing named Orion, and basically this child, Silas, knows which child is Drill, but is afraid to tell because Drill threatened to kill his mother, so obviously he doesn't want to tell, and I think that was very interesting. And also in this episode, they do kill Dr. Maria Benavides. The Drill kills her because she would have saved them and would have stopped Drill from possessing a child, and since things didn't go Drill's way, she died, and again, I didn't care, because they really did nothing with her other than her be petrified of Sean, and I wish they would have done more with his character, because then I would have cared more. I felt they killed off way too many characters in this season, and because of that, I just didn't care as much, and I wish I did, because I honestly didn't. But basically, what ends up happening is Minx pushes Silas, and basically now all the children think that Minx is in fact Drill and is possessed by Drill, and it made a lot of sense, I have to say, but I knew there was no way. It just seemed way too predictable. It seemed like, okay, that's obvious. And I was very happy when they revealed that it actually wasn't her. Because in episode 12, we basically think that it might be her, and they even take her to basically be destroyed. Because the only way to unpossess Drill from the child is to destroy them. And that's exactly what it seemed like was going to happen with Minx, that she was going to be destroyed. We do get this fantastic scene of Wes, basically telling her to say the words "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." It's very cheesy, but it worked very well because of the little girl that plays Minx. I think there's a fantastic scene with her where you don't know if she's going to live or if she's going to die. If they would have killed her off, I probably would have stopped watching the show, because Minx, for me, is the best character. I didn't want them to kill her off. I think it would have been really dumb if they did that, and I'm happy that they didn't. And basically, they realize that Minx is actually not possessed by Drill. It's actually the president's daughter, Cassandra, that's possessed by Drill. But it's just too late, because Cassandra is the Orion that Silas mentioned, and before anything can happen, Cassandra uses a news uplinks in the press conference to get out a distress signal and basically tell them that Drill's out there and then she's possessed, and basically, that's exactly what happens, and I thought that was very interesting. And then we get into the season finale, which I will very quickly get into, but I do want to say a few other things about the show before I get into the season finale. There are other characters that are introduced in the show that really have nothing to do. Harper, in my opinion, is a very wasted character. I get that she's a little girl, but she only appears every now and again. She really doesn't have a plot other than Drill just affected her. I wanted more from these kids. We get some really great stuff with Minx and Henry. The other kids, I felt, really didn't have much of anything. We had a quick scene with them here and there of what they really wanted. But other than that, we didn't really see what their motivation was. We didn't really see why this was happening. It kind of seemed out of place to me. And I just didn't really care as much about certain things as I should. And that really sucks. The season finale, I have to say, was really good, but it just felt very overwhelming because of the fact they dragged stuff out so long. They try to basically solve everything in this episode and throw so much information at you once that it got very confusing for me, actually. Because basically, as we know, now Drill's endgame has come to play, and he disposes of Cassandra's body. Cassandra is destroyed. You know, she disintegrates, basically. That's what happens to her. And basically, he decides to contact fully grown adults, and I thought that was interesting. He sends out sleeper calls to children he's contacted over the years into fully grown adults, which I thought was a very interesting premise. And Sean, in the meantime, meets up with Thomas's father, Ron, because Sean starts to realize there's this mysterious guy following him, and we realize this is Thomas's father. And that, I thought, was a very interesting plot twist. I really like that finally we have something to do with Sean. But before they can do anything with him, really, they kill him off. They kill off Ron. And it felt really dumb to me, because basically they want to find the meaning behind what Drill sent out, and they kill him off. Again, it just felt like shock value. These deaths don't feel genuine. Okay, when you kill off someone, you have to kill them off in a way where it feels like, okay, they needed to die. This never felt like this character needed to die. It felt like it was just, we wanted to do it because of people could, to get people to watch the next episode. It never felt like this person had died. The only person that felt like they had to die was Thomas. When they killed him off, I thought that was very well done. Other than that, I thought the deaths were very out of place and really didn't have to happen. But eventually, what they realized, I'm going to just very quickly get out all this, suddenly they give Jessup something to do, because Jessup has had nothing to do at this point. His ex-wife, who basically was with Drill in the 1980s, she's now going after him. This could have been very interesting had they introduced this in, say, episode 10. That would have been interesting. If they would have done this in, like, episode 11, 10, or 12, this could have been a really great finale. Unfortunately, it was so rushed, and there was so much information thrown at us all at once, that to me, it just felt like overload of stuff that should have happened if we wouldn't have had this damn affair plot. If the affair would not have happened, and they would have done this already, then we wouldn't have all this overload of information thrown at us at once, because it got very confusing for me. And I was kind of like, okay, what's going on here? It's a very confusing show when it should have been a very simple show. It's not a hard show to understand, but this finale was very hard for me to understand. I'm sorry, it was. There was so much going on at once. Eventually, though, what ends up happening is Wes luckily does shoot the woman that has kidnapped Claire, and basically, it seems like everything with Drill is over, but then we realize that Drill was never focused on world domination. His main goal was to take all the children, and that's exactly what he decides to do. What doesn't make sense to me is Claire goes with all these children, including Minx. All these children leave, basically. Wes tracks down Minx, but she's captured by the aliens before he can reach her. And when we realize that these are aliens, I'm like, that is the most obvious thing they could have done. Most obvious. It felt really dumb. I really hated that, and I thought it was really stupid that it turned out to be aliens. I knew from the moment this show started, it was aliens. And you know what I would have wanted? I would have wanted something a little bit more surprising. A terrorist group. That's what I wanted. I wanted this to be like a bad military group, or a group of people, a cult of people maybe. That's what I wanted, because that would have been really interesting. Aliens is simply way too obvious. It's like, no shit, it's aliens. I've known from the second this said it was a Steven Spielberg show, it would be something with aliens. It seemed very obvious, and just seemed very, like, whatever, you know, tell me something I don't know. It felt really out of place and very underwhelming. And when Claire, you know, basically desperate to save her son, she goes up into the beam of the lights, and Sean tries to save her, but she's abducted by the aliens, and basically all the children have now disappeared, and that's basically how the season ends. Henry's left behind. He doesn't remember anything that happened, and that's basically how stuff ends, and how I think the show's getting, because I don't think the show's gonna get renewed for a second season. And that's basically what I have to say about the show. And overall, guys, you can tell I was very underwhelmed by this show. For everything I liked, there was stuff I didn't like. It was a very underwhelming show for me. It could have been a lot more, and it really wasn't. I mean, there were some very thrilling scenes on this show. Some scenes where I didn't know what was going to happen. But really, for me, there were about 3 great episodes of the show. The rest is just good. It had a lot of potential to be really great, but it never, I think, really reached that potential, because it focused on things that we just simply didn't care about. I don't care about this relationship drama between Claire and Sean. I don't care about relationship drama between Lena and Wes. I would have cared more about it if they focused on just them. There were times where I felt they should have just focused on Minx's family. There were times where I felt they should have just focused on Claire's family. They simply focused on too much this season. They should have done more in the second season, spread it out a little bit more, then I would have enjoyed that. I understand they didn't know if they were going to get picked up. I get that. But I felt they could have done a lot more with these characters, a lot more with the story in general, and I was very severely, I was very let down, I have to say. I was definitely let down. They start to do a lot more of the Secretary of Defense as well. Fromer really do nothing with him other than, oh, you know, I know what I'm doing, you don't know what you're talking about, things like that. He was a very annoying character, and there are so many characters that had stuff that could have had really compelling stuff, and I think really didn't. The acting in the show, I think, is strong, as I said. Lily Rabe, I think, was fantastic in the show as Claire. You see how devoted she is to stop this. However, there were some times where I felt she was overacting. There were times where she really is overacting, and things weren't as big as a deal. As I said, Barry Sloan really is not that good of an actor. Milo Ventimiglia, I think, is very good, but I think they just did way too much with him this season. They should have had him be John Doe this season and have him be Sean next season. That's what I kind of feel they should have done there. And they should have revealed that he was Sean, I think, halfway through this season. Kristen Connolly as Lena, I think, was probably the best actress in the show. She never was overacting for me. She always was very genuine. I loved her relationship with Minx, Kylie Rogers. Kylie Rogers, for me, is a future star. She really is, I think, the best thing to come out of the show, and she really is what kept me watching. Minx is what kept me watching. The story of Drill is what kept me watching, but it really just felt way too obvious, and because of that, I really don't think this show is going to return. I wish I could tell you guys, yes, the show is getting a second season. I don't know, and the thing is, I don't think I want one, because they said if this show does get a second season, they're not even going to focus on these characters. I don't understand that either. Like, apparently Claire's barely going to be in the second season. I don't understand this. It's really stupid. You can tell why this took so long to come out, because it ended up being very underwhelming. I don't really think a lot of people watch this show. I didn't watch it. There were times where I forgot it was on. Literally, like, there was a point where I'm like, oh yeah, The Whispers, I gotta catch up on that, because I was down to, like, episode 11, and I hadn't seen 2 weeks of it, and I watched it very quickly, and, you know, Again, there are some things they did that I really did like, but it never reached its full potential. It always could have been more, and I don't think they realized how great of a show this could have been. There was a lot more they could have done with it. They could have made it a lot more predictable, and it just kind of felt kind of underwhelming to me. I wish it could have been more, but unfortunately, it was what it was, and I don't rate TV seasons, but for TV seasons I don't really like, I am going to rate it. So, Whispers for me, the season 1, it gets a B. I was never that into this show. It was a show I watched just so I could review to you guys. If I wasn't reviewing it, I probably would never have watched it. And other than that, that's really all I have to say about this show. So that's basically my review of season 1 of The Whispers. Let me know what you guys saw of the show if you did see it. I think it had some really great potential, as I said, but it never really reached it and could have been a lot more than it was. And that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will actually be for a movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.